Morena tātou e ho ma. Welcome to Friday, day 23 of our Alert Level 4 lockdown. It is Friday the 17th of April, and for those of you who have been watching these live streams for a little while, I've tried something a little bit different with the angle today. I'm not sure if it's working. I feel like I have a tiny head in the middle of this very large screen, but let me know how you think it looks. Just trying things out, you know how it is. On lockdown, there's only so many things outside of regular mahi and staying in contact with friends and whānau that you can undertake in order to entertain oneself. Novelty is hard to come by, to say the least. For those of you who are really interested in what comes next, yesterday a whole lot more clarity was delivered in the form of the Prime Minister's statement, which obviously is happening every day now, Morena Ana, about what happens when we move into Alert Level 3. I just want to state straight off the bat that it is really critical that as much as there are going to be some awesome, really useful kind of graphics and info charts that are circulating around social media, if you are unsure about anything at all, make sure that the source that you check things against is covid19.govt.nz. That is the official website for information, covid19.govt.nz. Because as we've seen, it has been the case that some interesting alternative information has been disseminated in the past. Logan is asking if I'll be queuing up for Macca's or KFC first when we hit level 3. Logan, mate, I'm sorry to disappoint, or maybe probably play into all of the kind of stereotypes that we hold around the Green Party of Aotearoa in New Zealand, but I am in fact a vegan, so one of those vegans I will not. However, I will continue to purchase locally grown plant-based kai. Kia ora and thank you, Nicole. This artwork is by the fantastic Gina Keel, who is a local artist in New Zealand. I think she's based out of Wellington. She does a huge amount of incredible work. I actually got this during a exhibition that I had the good fortune of hosting at Parliament when I, as part of the Parliamentary Art Committee, brought together and curated a bunch of fantastic wahine who just produced the best art show that I have seen in a very long time. And it also was a very weird experience after coming from particularly Karangahape Road in Auckland and having to fight to have little nooks and crannies to showcase art, to all of a sudden have a parliamentary art space. It was very out the gate. We've got some more questions coming through. Morena Coral, follow-up question, which mechanisms should be used to tackle inequality? So, just want to firstly continue to elaborate on the Alert Level 3 stuff, and then I will begin to unpack the inequality bits and pieces, which I think is really, really important. Regan, you can absolutely pretend like it said KFC. You can pretend anything you like, mate. One thing that I found, and this is not just from studying philosophy in my BA at uni, but it's something that my old man said when I was a lot younger, probably about 7 years old, and I was a petulant and annoying, precocious young kid, as you can probably imagine. And I was doing my first ever speech for primary school in front of him. And I remember just having worked really hard, and it was on the double standards between kids and adults, as only it could be when you're a precocious and annoying kind of 8, 9, 10-year-old. You know, how kids have a bedtime and adults don't, and kids don't get to choose what they eat and adults do, and all of these other bits and pieces. And I remember reading this speech out in front of my old man and kind of just waiting for him to give me a form of response or a sign that it was okay because I'd worked hard on it. And Dad kind of looks at me after I'd finished the speech and goes, "Oh, have you thought about this?" And I was like, "Oh God, Dad thinks that I'm shocking. I haven't done my research. I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, I'll go back and completely rewrite it." And Dad was like, whoa, hold on a second. the fact of the matter is, if you're trying to construct an argument, then what you should be trying to do is take into account the way that different people see the world, and that will help you to build a better kind of proposition or argument to begin with. And incorporating different people's worldviews only means that you have a stronger position to approach them with. And the way that my old man put it is, different people see different things differently. Paul Swarbrick, circa probably early 2000s. And it's funny because that different people see different things differently really stuck in my mind all throughout my early kind of childhood, and I think helped to inform the way that I approach politics, which is the importance of recognizing that other people have different life experiences, different backgrounds and otherwise, and you're never going to convince them of something by yelling at them. And then I went to uni and found out that a dude called Socrates, approximately a millennia ago, came up with the notion of subjectivity. So it wasn't quite Paul Swarbrick circa 2000s who came up with subjectivity. But nonetheless, I credit my old man for giving that lesson to a 7, 8, 9-year-old. Anyway, I've completely gone off track here, folks. Geck is asking someone to see the full name of K Road. Yeah, mate. We're decolonising everything. Rangahape Road is the new K Road, mate. So just on the point of Alert Level 3, really critical that people aren't undertaking new risks. Remember that it'll be announced on Monday after Cabinet, which is kind of the collection of the top tier of government ministers coming together, evaluating the risks and the data and the research and discerning what the best way for us to move forward is as a nation. So Alert Level 3 we can't take for granted. But should it be deemed, then as we move into it, long story short, the nub of it is what you need to remember is do not take extra reckless risks. Do not all of a sudden decide to take up a new hobby that might land you in hospital if it goes wrong. Do not operate outside of your usual regions. Do not decide to go on some long new bit of travel. If you can continue to work from home, then please do so. The advice that's been given for kids at school and those who are students at tertiary or at polytechs or otherwise is if you can study from home, please do so. Particularly if you're vulnerable people inside of your bubble. So the general advice that's been given is that for those who are in year 11, 12 and 13, so during the NCEA levels, they will be required to continue studying from home. But if required, if you're year 10 and under, or you have kids at year 10 and under, then you will be able to go back to school. But obviously the new kind of procedures around the 2 meters distancing and otherwise will continue to apply. Daniel Hay is asking about the story I just gave about my dad. Yeah, my dad did say that to me when I was 8 years old, and that probably has that probably has led to who I am today. I credit my dad a lot with who I am. He actually, funnily enough, just for sake of backstory yarns, folks, given that you're all tuned into the live stream here, Dad used to taunt me when I was growing up. I grew up in a Tory or a National Party voting household. And Dad was engaged in the financial sector. So we remember very intimately the effects of the global financial crisis in 2008 and how that rippled across the world. And it was such a peculiar thing to grow up with a dad who seemed to have real cognitive dissonance, that being two really inconsistent views about the world held in his head at the same time. My dad usually does, by the way, go back and watch all my live streams. So Dad, I am talking about you. And that meant that he would talk about all of this kind of rhetoric around beneficiaries or people in the criminal justice system or otherwise, but then also showcase values of compassion and care and how we could improve as a society, particularly towards his daughters, me and my little sister Grace. And we just went through such a bizarre time growing up where I would consistently be encouraged to challenge Dad about the way that he thinks about the world. And it's for this reason that I give a massive shout out to all of the parents out there who are dealing with potentially precocious kids like I was at home. And that helped to formulate the way that I think about things, the creativity and kind of the critical thought that I take to the political system in particular. So he is now a Green Party voter, I can confirm, and he's begun to kind of align and recognise the need for systemic change, and that it is very difficult as an individual to battle against a system where all of the odds are stacked against you. Which brings me to the point that's been raised by a few of you in here, and the article that I shared yesterday on my Facebook page, which I'll also share in the comments if you want to follow up on it. I think it's really meaningful that we don't forget about this experience as we look forward to alert level 3, as I keep saying free, as we look forward to alert level 3, as we are thinking about easing into a new way of doing things. There will be a lot of folks who have some very powerful platforms, whether they are politicians or commentators or, big bosses, who will be telling everybody just to get on with it and to get back to normal, quote unquote. The problem with getting back to normal is I think a lot of us are really conscious, now probably more than ever, about the inequalities and inequities that our normal had implicit in it. The kind of easing back into normality and not addressing those inequities is a way of giving up one of the biggest opportunities that we have all had in this collective shared experience, which I think was best, as I've kind of spoken about before in these live streams, best elucidated by Secretary of Education Iona Holstead when she said that this pandemic hasn't created inequities, it's exposed them. We're all very conscious and very uncomfortable of the reality of inequality right now, but we've also seen the capacity of our political system to respond almost immediately to do things like house the homeless, who are incredibly vulnerable to things like COVID-19, to increase support for those who we place at most risk in terms of poverty, in terms of increases to the benefit payments. We have seen all of those things that we were told for so long were politically impossible because it has been exposed that they were simply a matter of political priority. And these are the kind of realities and truths that I don't want people to lose sight of as we move into alert level 3, alert level 2, alert level 1, and are pushed by very powerful and wealthy people to go back to a so-called state of normality. How many people did that normal actually work for? I have a lot of really interesting discussions, obviously, in the space of what it means to create a new kind of politics that people can engage with and that we can all collectively help to create our future with. And the notion of kind of class comes up a lot, right? And for those of you who aren't necessarily aware of what that is, it's a way of understanding society as economically stratified. Basically, you have people who make a whole lot of money from the way things are, you have people who don't make a whole lot of money from the way things are, and as we saw in the outcome of the policy responses, particularly the implementation of a social safety net in around the 1930s, subsequent to the Great Depression and the World Wars, is that we had the growth of a middle class because we implemented things like progressive taxation and we began to support those who had historically been the most vulnerable. And in turn, everybody was given greater opportunity to contribute to society and all of us were better off. We had the greatest kind of leap forward in terms of productivity, in terms of new ideas, in terms of research and innovation and development as a society. When you provide people with those opportunities, when you ensure that people don't have the barriers and the traps that poverty puts in your way. So my kind of imploring is that we recognise the opportunity to reinstate some of those basic requirements around the ability for people to survive. On that topic of class that I was talking about before, a lot of people identify, interestingly, in 2020 as kind of being middle class because we recognise that we can do things if we are earning, above the average wage of, for example, purchasing a coffee every day or so, that we can afford to put kai on the table or food in our cupboards. But if you don't own wealth, that primarily in Aotearoa New Zealand being a home, you are probably far more likely to be a member of the so-called working class in terms of how quickly things could begin to disintegrate if something like a pandemic, for example, were to strike. We don't realise how close all of us actually are in terms of how many paychecks it might take, what twist or turn in our lives or life experience might be undertaken or befallen upon us. And that in turn means that all of us who currently have to work 40 plus hours a week in order to survive do actually kind of probably count as members of the working class. So that's just really important kind of stuff to keep in the back of your mind. Is frequently in politics, unfortunately, even those of us who would really benefit from working together are often fragmented, and that only benefits people who are currently profiting from the status quo. We need a broad coalition of folks who are thinking differently, even if we have slightly different inceptions of how those things could be done differently. So just in summation from today, I want to read a really brief excerpt from a piece by Dr. Ian Hislop, who is a lecturer at the University of Auckland in social work and in a broad range of other kind of applied sociology. And he wrote this piece for Newsroom called Lockdown Reality for Other New Zealand. And this is just a part from it that I'll quote. We don't see the struggles of the other New Zealand on our TV screens. It is not what the "we're all in this together" message is made of. We might get the odd flick of the tireless food bank helpers boxing up parcels, but of course those at the bottom of the neoliberal heap are disenfranchised in our social system and only get to be on TV in the form of shock and scandal bait. However, social work is an occupation that walks, sometimes without invitation, into the homes of disenfranchised citizens every day. The inadequacy of greed-based economics is exposed in this encounter, although pushing the problem back up the chain where it originates and the flaws inherent to liberal capitalism has been carefully erased from most social work job descriptions over the past 30 years. These are demanding times for social work in many ways. And again, just in summation of all of that, and you can read the full piece. I don't have the time before I get on my regular 8:30 a.m. morning call to read it to you in its entirety. And also probably you can read that for yourself. But what this indicates, what Dr. Ian Hislop's work indicates, what the work of so many of those who are already at the front lines, those who are volunteering at present to box up food parcels, and, you know, kind of the narrative that's starting to emerge about hazard pay and about the need for there to be a temporary pay cut for those at the top, is the idea that inequality doesn't work only in a crisis or pandemic. But the reason that we right now are having to undertake questions around transient or short-term top-ups for those who are at the front lines and cuts for those who are at the top is that fundamentally is not a resilient system. That fundamentally does not work. And if it takes pandemics to expose that, it's a problem. And I hope that the silver lining of this awful public health crises is that we have the opportunity to work together to invent a new normal. So remember, folks, stay home, save lives. We'll see you tomorrow at 12 noon, and be kind, especially to yourselves. Kia ora.